Good afternoon, reading room. We are here with a new book. And okay, so let's just talk a little bit. So I'm here tending to the fire because even though that's a big giant dry piece of wood with a whole bunch of holes in it, they was seeing my video. Yeah, not burning that well. It's been there all day. So anyway, I'm trying to get the video all up. I don't know why it didn't create an entire video, and only 23 or 24 minutes of that video was showing. I'm not quite sure for my classroom engagement, but we'll get that working, and I'm downloading it, but that takes a half an hour to make the video, to process the video, whatever. So we finished The Fall of Man, or The Fall, which is about the fall of man, and it is about the fall of man. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit, although I thought about it after the fact, and then I kept like, well, I can't make it work. I'm going to see if it works a little bit. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get right into our new story. I know what I wanted to tell you. So what ended up happening was I got the memory of when my husband told me that, right? When he told me that was him and all the stuff that went along with it. And it was shortly after we got married. And I remember, I think I told you, laying in bed, actually crying because I did not know the man that I married. And there is a part in Elle King's song that is, I want to get the right name, but she sings a song that was actually a line. And as I said, I'm seeing a lot of lines out of my life, full stories. Remember, hyperbole and a half. Those are our stories from when my son was growing up. How did they get those stories? And the thing about those stories is that there's some pictures there that could not have occurred at the time of writing the story. So how did they know the pictures? Some of the pictures existed well after the story. So how did they get that drawing when those things didn't exist until long after the publication or after the publication? And so there are stories of my life that are out there, and those are so specific. They're so specific that they cannot be somebody else's story. And so I keep seeing, excuse me, I keep seeing this, which is, somewhat disturbing, but I know it's on this, bigger quest, so it doesn't bother me so much, right? I don't mean for them, a bigger quest for them. That's of course. I mean a bigger quest for me. It's a bigger quest for me in that, yeah, I mean, they've labeled me as the harlot, and all of the people at the Catholic school that the kids went to are just unbelievably atrocious, along with my in-laws as well, who are wealthy, and and then the universities, right? So I've talked about this for a while, but I remember, and I want to get the Elle King song so I get the name right. So that's not what I wanted. Why can't I search my playlist? That's the whole thing there. Why can't I see anything? All right, sorry about that. I found it now. I hate when that does that because then I end up getting socked for that. Stop. Oh, it's not a big deal. It is, but it's hopefully not. Okay, so the Elle King song is All This to make sure she gets credit for her song. Elle King, Good Thing. And it's like playing in my head. How come I couldn't think of it? It's a Good Thing Gone. And in the video, she says, you couldn't put down that last drink, and I couldn't get that shit past me. I don't know if I have the words exactly right, but I think I do. I said those words. I said those words to my husband at the time when we were having the conversation about all those things he was telling me about himself. And I asked him, I said, I don't understand the story. I don't understand it. I told you, he did Edgar Allan Poe first, right? And then he did the Albert Camus. And I'm like, please tell me, I want to know. But even I said to him, I said, all I can do is assume what you mean and how I wouldn't know if I was right or wrong. So why can't you tell me? And he never did. That was all of what he gave me. But at that time, we had a conversation. He drank a lot. So that Albert Camus was him. The last scene that he's talking to that person, and she alludes to the fact that she's a police officer. I did that. That conversation was when we met. So the last end, the woman he was with, that was me. That was me. And I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to show you where he took me. We were driving a long time. I don't know how long. I fell asleep in the car. And this is when he was telling me about himself, right? So it was over the period of days. And this was one of the days that he was telling me more about himself. And he said he lived here. And I said, how could you live here? How could you possibly live here? And the more I went into the place, the more afraid I became. Because I literally said to him, the only person who could live here is a killer, a pedophile. This looks like a pedophile's home. And he kept walking with me, and there was one final door back there. And he said, there's one final door. Do you want to go through that? And I said, no, I do not. And it was like, and I don't, it's a little foggy, but I said to him, don't you take that as me being afraid to go through that door. I felt like he was trying to jog a memory. I said, I want to get out of here. I have no need to see any more of this. I have seen enough. And if what is behind that door is worse than what I have seen right here, I don't have any reason to see it. I'm not that person. I've never seen two girls in a cup. I'm not that person. I don't have to look at those things. I don't have to keep my eyes fixed on tragedy on the road. I'm not that person. I don't want my mind to be scarred with those things. I really do not want my mind to be scarred with those things. So I remember not having any desire to see that last room he wanted to show me. But again, in hindsight, and at that time, I got the feeling, because I didn't want to see that door, that he was at that moment. Are you sure you don't want to see it? Don't you think that that's me? Like I'm hiding myself from seeing a truth. I don't have a need to see such degradation. Never had a desire to see such degradation, right? So that's why I didn't choose to go in there. I remember that part clearly. The house is on Zillow. So let me see if I can't get that. Oh, that's not it. Hold on. Okay, so give me a sec. This house here that you are seeing, what looks like a 2-story apartment here, right, is in Cicero, Chicago. This is not the place that Stuart took me to. This is something else. Oh, that's not it. Okay, hold on just a minute. Here we go. This is in Cicero, Illinois, and this is where I grew up. I believe this is where I first grew up. We were at 23rd and Paulina. I remember that 5124. I do think that sounds like a familiar address, but that I noticed that. I was just looking around Cicero. And all of this stuff that's been going on with me, I looked around Cicero and I saw this, and there's lots of apartments and things that were there, but this is the one that I recognized. And I recognized those stairs because we used to stay upstairs, and Grandma and Grandpa were downstairs. That I remember. I remember. I remember that cubby hole there. I remember walking around the stairs. I remember the banister there, like the chair that would for the electric chair. I remember that window. I remember all this. I remember the bay window. I remember the walls being soft. That was Grandma and Grandpa's bedroom, I remember. Their walls in the bedroom were soft. I remember those giant wood plank floors. This was in the living room. So Grandma and Grandpa's bedroom was upstairs, and this was so they had a bay window, right? So if you saw, right, of course you did. That bay window there in the front goes upstairs and downstairs. So you've got Grandma and Grandpa's bedroom, and you've got the living room, the living area. Or at least it was a bedroom. I don't remember exactly everything clearly. I mean, I was no more than 3. So I remember those rooms. I remember that ceiling. Hold on. I gotta move this. That ceiling here. I remember the ceiling there. I remember the arched walls. This was going into the dining room. I don't remember exactly, but I remember those arched entryways is what I remember. I don't know what this room is, but I remember the frosted glass that you couldn't see out that window clearly. Whoops. You couldn't see out that window clearly because it had that frosted glass. Why do I keep hitting that? Stop it. Gotta make sure you can see what I'm looking at. This happens to be most interesting to me because the whole flowers in the attic story I say, I remember those flowers. I loved those flowers. I thought every house had those flowers on it. So I remember, I don't know who painted those flowers. I feel like it was my mom, but just because I feel like it was my mom doesn't mean that it was my mom, of course. But I remember those flowers. I remember those flowers and how much I loved those flowers. And what I think was that I was an unwanted child. Maybe I was aborted. Maybe I was aborted. I think I was. And I think somebody saved me. But there's a reason why I think I was aborted, and it's this. Because my husband said to me once, now this I don't remember that clearly. I don't remember this that clearly, but I remember, why would I have thought of this out of my own head, right? And it was him who said it to me. So it was, what if all it took to have an abortion was to call the baby out? And I, of course, I don't know if I make jokes or if I think jokes. I always think jokes. The very first thing, I'm like, seriously, what is he? He's like, hello in there. So I don't know if I thought a joke or made a joke. I do remember lots of times when Stuart was showing me some of this stuff and telling me that there were jokes I wanted to make, but I also wanted to take it very seriously because I knew he was telling me about himself, right? So when he said, things like, I don't remember some things, I would make a joke about it, right? Like, yeah, I don't want to, there's some personal things in there that I don't want to say that he said. So, I remember him saying that. And if you think about it, my well story would be that story, right? My well story would be that story of a memory of that abortion where there were 2 days. The first day was somebody said, will you come out and play with me? I can't today. Come back. I'm going to come back tomorrow. Don't bring anyone with you. And then come and play. And I went back the next day and I was at the well and he called me and I fell in the well. And if you remember, my first thought at birth or whatever it was that, oh good, I thought I died in the well. Why not? Why wouldn't it be possible? Why wouldn't it be possible? And the vacuum is simply to clean out your eggs. The baby's there. They say it's to get all the parts of the baby. It's not. They don't do that to that little, what do they have to do? The vacuum isn't about getting all the parts of a little teeny tiny baby. The vacuum is about getting all your eggs. And I didn't read the paper. What was I going to do? What was I going to do? I was raped. I wasn't going to have the baby, right? So I didn't read anything about it. And when I was in the car, my aunt said, there's a possibility that you'll be sterile, that when they do the vacuum that they may get your eggs. And in my head, I thought, well, I guess that's what I deserve. How about that? How about getting raped and then thinking that you deserve to never have kids? That's what you do to women. That's what you kind of men do to women. That's what you do to women. And you think it's okay because somebody from the future told you I was the harlot. That AI person who is the big G God with all the information, they told you I was the harlot, didn't they? But what you didn't bet on was that the harlot was going to look and act like me. You thought that they were going to look like a wickedy witch with a great big wart on their nose, and you didn't know that you would find that person so attractive, that harlot. And then you created your own personal hell, a real hell, where you desire the thing that you set your whole life out to destroy. You desire it with all your heart. And the harlot will never desire you because you don't even know who she is. You don't know the first thing about her. You have all false information. And that is Now you say AI is if this big G God, doesn't AI have all the right information? Yeah, they do. But it's the asshole searching for the information that doesn't. And by the way, my guess is AI can't lie. That AI has a truth thing built into it. So you won't be able to use it to destroy the world simply because AI has a truth built into it. I believe that. So that's what makes AI the big G God. But if you have all the information, what ends up happening is you become a very small G God. And nobody wants that. Nobody needs that. Ain't anybody got time for that. So I planned on all of that as an intro, believe it or not. Some of it on the harlot stuff I didn't plan. But oh, let me show you. I didn't show you the house that Stuart took me through. So this is still, I remember that doorway. I remember those panels over the door. These panels here. Let me see if you can see it. Yeah, that panel there over the doorway. I was little. I thought all doorways had those panels there. That was a vent. It vented so that you had airflow in those rooms. It helped with the airflow. It was like what do you call it? Return air kind of a thing. I remember this floor. I remember how the floor went halfway up the wall like that. I remember that. I remember those doors, those hard, heavy wooden doors. I remember that's where the stove was. I remember that black and white there, that black and white brick. I remember the planks. I remember so much. I might even remember that. I'm not sure. I remember this brick. I don't remember anything else of this room, only that brick, and that right there, like the tray there, that's like a what do you call it? A dumbwaiter. It's like a dumbwaiter. I don't know that it is, but it's like a dumbwaiter. It might be, and then you would know I know what I'm talking about. Here's the garage, which is underneath the apartment. And this is the attic. I remember those arches. I remember that on the window, those colored, it was just, they were stickers of stained glass on the windows. I remember looking at that brick building, although so many brick buildings look like that. And I remember looking over the street, but so many homes in Chicago had bay windows and looked over the street that would look just like that. So that wasn't unusual there. I don't remember, I vaguely remember the painting on the wall, but that could have been newer for sure. I want to look at this door over here. I do remember all the locks on the door like that. I do remember that. I remember the painted brown floor. I remember that cement floor that was painted brown. I remember the stairs to the basement. I remember the basement. Grandpa slept in the basement. I remember these walls, whatever those were made out of. I remember those are unique walls. I remember that. I remember the brick wall and the pipes on the brick wall here. I remember those walls. That's another room in the basement. Here's the garage. Here's where you drove your car in here. Or the I don't know. It was basement. It was. That's where the washer and dryer was down there. Nobody really liked to go down there because look at it. But I remember it. Holy smokes, I haven't seen that floor and I remember that floor. We had a similar floor in our house. I remember that bathtub in the basement. I remember the walls not being done. I remember this pipe coming out of the floor, not to trip on the pipe. And this other little thing right next to it. I remember both of those and not to trip on those. We used to trip on them all the time as a little kid. I remember the brown bathtub and the brown toilet and the brown vanity. I don't remember this one. And many of Chicago's backyards basically were the same thing, which was the garage, the detached garage, and then you know, the alley that went to the garage. So that's nothing new there. This is the place that I remember. This is in Cicero, New York. So I have a New York accent. You may have heard it. I don't know why. Everyone said it, and it seems to be different than everybody else's that are with me from Chicago. So I don't know why. So I looked at Cicero, New York, and I recognized there were many buildings that I recognized. Not many homes, a few homes. But this is the one that I believe that Stuart took me to. And you'll see it's quite unique. So it's not so far-fetched that I would recognize it. I actually literally wrote this guy and I said, how dare you have such a home that looks like somebody was some trauma occurred there in that home, and you're selling it for $150,000. This is being sold for $150,000. Tell me how that could be possible, except for the fact that it's worth something in name, or it's worth something. I'm going to get this whole thing in as best I can. There we go. Yeah, it's worth something because somebody owned it. You know, if you have let's say that Jeffrey Dahmer owned that home. Because I think I'm almost positive that's what I said. It looks like a home that it looks like a place Jeffrey Dahmer would be in. There's a lot of things I remember. I remember that fan in the window. I remember this entryway. And notice the address, 7296, which has got your 666, because you have a 9, and a 6. And the extra 3 on the 9, the extra 3 on the 9 makes it 666, right? So 729 plus 9 is 18. 6 is 24. Divided by 3 is 6. No, divided by 3 is 8. Doesn't matter. 996. You got it. Okay. Let me get this right for you. Good. I think I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, so this is the house I remember, or whatever the hell you call this. That's what you walked into. $150,000. Now, what's interesting about this is that I have had in this house those cabinets. So the cabinets look familiar, but because I had them in the house. What was interesting about this that was very memorable was, of course, how disgusting it was, but the purple walls. Why was it painted in purple? So it's easy to remember something like that. Now, it's not the only house with purple walls, and I was only through it once, and it was at nighttime. So I'm not saying that I remember all of this, but there are things about this that I recall and that ring bells, including that bed. This says it has 6 beds in it. It doesn't have 6 bedrooms. It has 6 beds. So that right there makes it not only suspicious, but tawdry. And as you can see, just puts despicable ideas in your mind about what could possibly be going on here. I'm not looking at the details of any of this that I see. I don't want to know the details. I remember that fan. I don't remember. I mean, look at that disgusting wall. And yet somebody sits there? That's a place where somebody sits and works? I remember this room. I remember coming through this long, thin room here. This may have been the first room we came through. I remember these floors. I remember that almost new washer and dryer there, which seems so strange to me, right? To have an almost new washer and dryer next to that. And like I said, I remember let me see where good. I remember those floors. Almost brand new washer and dryer. I remember that. I remember that bathtub having a hamper and just being just that disgusting. Look at the door here at the bottom. $150,000 for this home. Look at the door there at the bottom. Let me make sure that you can see it. Hold on, because you can't. Look at that. I mean, what possesses a person to put a home like this online to sell? And then what possesses a realtor to sell a home like this without having police involved? Thank God they've got some fresh stir in there, huh? Because it's got to smell like shit. Don't you suppose? Same room, another view. I remember this. Now, these were popular in the 1970s, so that might not be anything that is that big of a deal. But the whole combination between the ripped up floor and that shell sink and the marble sink and then that vanity there too. How do you call that a vanity? Jesus. No one could possibly be vain sitting in that place. So here's the outside. Got a fingerprint from that finger. And this, I remember very clearly. This room is the room I remember. That couch. I've seen that couch. I remember that unfinished wall and that unfinished ceiling and that purple wall there and that black refrigerator there. I remember that scene. That seemed to me to be where it was leading into another room that I said, I'm getting out of here. Like, this is it. I'm done. I was so disturbed. I remember seeing a dollhouse there and how that bothers me to see who's playing in a dollhouse in a home like this? There it is again. Who's playing in a dollhouse in a home like this? All I could think of is big, fat, dirty white men. Is that the Buffalo Bills? And this is clearly a lot of paraphernalia for what? The red zebrick looks familiar to me. But this is a made-up scene. The front of it is not the same as the back of that scene. Whoops. I say I was going very slow. The front of this scene is not the same as the back of the scene there. So that's a cut and paste on the front. But it is interesting that isn't that a Buffalo Bills? And what are all those stickers? I don't know. The zebrick there, I remember how dirty. I remember those green walls there. That you can see has been edited too. What's the big white mark that's marking? What is that marking out there? Right? Mold, mildew, and just a bunch of beds and laundry baskets and TVs. Yeah, just a bunch of beds, laundry baskets, and TVs. I remember that bed. I remember that locker. And who's that creep? I remember those walls, and I remember the patch-up work on the walls. It's like they did the patch-up work after they painted it, which didn't make any sense and made it very memorable. I remember that window, that small window there all the way to the right, because it made no sense. Those two windows were brand new. They were like brand new. I remember that. What sense does that make to have those new windows like that in this disgusting, dilapidated, whatever the hell it is? So, did you enjoy that for reading room? We'll probably start our story tomorrow. What time is it? 2:45. What time did we start? 2 o'clock, right? Let's look at our book for a minute. So there was a whole reason for that madness, and that is this. My husband, a long time ago, there was a series of books. I don't remember why. I think he was taking some classes is what I think he was taking, but I'm not sure the class, whatever. And he ended up taking a class where he had a whole bunch of books, where he got a whole bunch of fiction books. Like The Fall was one of them. You know, there were a few other ones. And I think, and I've mentioned this to you before, but what I said is I don't have the shelf room for your books. So you can give your books away because I probably won't read them. I have plenty to read, right? The things that I enjoy. I looked at your books. They don't interest me so much. So let me know what you want to do with them. I'll buy your shelf, whatever, but they're not going on my shelves just because, look, I'm a teacher. Those are all my books. I mean, they're all my books. Where am I putting your 17 books? I don't know, because all my shelf space was full. But it wasn't like I wasn't willing to talk about it, right? I just didn't know how committed he was to his books like I am to mine. So he was bothered by the fact that I was going to get rid of his books, and I was like, All right, fine. Yeah, I don't care. I'll make some shelf space. You can find some shelf space. I didn't say I'm getting rid of them, but okay, since it hurts your feelings so much, I'll even find some shelf space for you. It's your home. It's not like you can't put your books on a shelf, but okay, I'll find the shelf space for you. Seriously. Well, I'm coming to find, I'm so glad I didn't get rid of them. In fact, they're on a pile to go, and I just pulled this one out of the pile to go because I read 2 of them, and I'm just, whoo! And I think I told you I read The Fall, and then after we were done with The Fall that day, I read started The Stranger that night from Albert Camus, and then read the rest of it the next day. Another book about my husband. He was that guy. Here's the thing about The Stranger that I want to tell you about. Do you want to know the secret behind The Stranger? I'm going to tell you the secret behind that book, The Stranger. And it connects to The Fall. So if you heard the book, The Fall. So if you heard that story with me, it connects. It is the same person. I mean, I was told it was. How confident can I possibly be? I can't be that confident. But The Stranger, here's the thing about it. Why was he the stranger? He was the stranger because nobody got him. Nobody got him. He went up to an Arab, which is the word that they used in the book. He uses in the book, and he killed him. Now, there were all kinds of circumstances that led up to this. But the bottom line is that the day after his mom died, he didn't shed a tear at the service. He fell asleep. He had sex with what is being called or labeled as someone close to a prostitute the very next day. And then he killed an Arab in cold blood, shot him 5 times. Why did you have to shoot him more than once? What was the 5 times about? Kind of thing. He went to trial, and now in his mind, he's like, this is not happening. And he looks at things in what would be considered not realistically, and probably not to his benefit, right? I have to warm up because the fire is going out, and I've got the heater over there, and it's just a little bit cold. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to finish that thought. Just give me 1 second, really. It's worth it. It's really worth it if you want to understand that story, The Stranger, and sort of a little bit more about Albert Camus if you want to. Just hold on. Okay, you're going to hear the blower, but it's literally 62 degrees, and that doesn't sound very cold for a house, but you have to have blankets on or be warmed up because it is cold. So, let's say that this is all the same man. Let's say that Albert Camus is the stranger. He's also The Fall. He's also Edgar Allan Poe in The Fall, in Hans Fall, right? The story of Hans Fall, right? Whatever. And let's say it was the fall of man. Let's say, and if you read the Edgar Allan Poe story, it's a literal fall of man. He's talking about his physical experience falling from the spiritual world, which we would call it. We would call it if he came from, we're going to call it the spiritual world because he didn't come from outer space. He didn't say that. He fell, the fall of man. So the only assumption you could make on that story is that he fell from grace, which would be our idea of heaven, right? Is as the story goes, as the story goes. Okay, so what if he came from the spiritual world? What if, we'll give him a name because he was only called a stranger. I can't, maybe he had a name in the he probably, I'm sure he must have had a name in the story. Isn't that funny? Ugh, I hate when I do that. But I read the story in like, I don't even know, what, 8 hours? Which may seem like a long time, but 4 hours one night and 4 hours, probably only 3 hours the next day, something like that. So 7 hours, something like that. So let's say the stranger is the guy who, in the fall of man. Okay, let's say that he is the stranger. He came from the spiritual world, not any other world. The fall of man is fall from grace. So that's the story. You can change it if you want to, but you're changing the story that we all know. That's where he came from. So if he came from the spiritual world, don't you think that he would have, especially if it was something like Lucifer, who was the morning star, the most beautiful, like harps is what he looked like, I guess, light and music. Yeah, that's what Lucifer was. So let's say he fell and he was a star angel. We think of him as Dante. No, he was a human being who said, myself, I think he said, I'm going to save those 1/3 of the angels that went down because I get why they went down. That's my sort of concept about it. I don't know. So, but here's the thing that I do know about who the stranger is. I'm absolutely certain about who the stranger is. And that's somebody who came from the other side, right? The spiritual realm, and who could clearly see an evil heart. Now, the Arab that he killed was chasing his friend, and he wasn't a great friend, but it was incorrect what he was doing, and he was trying to harm him and people that he loved. So he already had established he wasn't a great guy. But how do you go up to somebody without knowing anything really about that person except for what somebody else told you, and then 5 shots, right? How do you do that? Now, this guy had taken a knife to his friend, so he had reason to fear him, but that's not what any of the story was about. He didn't show any fear of this guy at all, so that's not what the story was about. The story is about, he knew him. He knew his heart and soul. He knew that person was an evil person. And when you go up and eliminate a person because you are certain that they are pure evil, because you come from the other side, you could do that. So you know that that person is pure evil and you need to get rid of them. Let's say you knew it was Hitler, like you kind of are doing with the harlot. You're talking about me as a harlot, like that. Exactly that. Exactly that. What are all these people doing? They're getting rid of the harlot because they're blaming their own sins on a woman, of course. That's a whole different story. But let's say Hitler was the evil demon. I think he was AI. I think that there were people behind him that were the Germans that allowed him to be the fall guy for all of their evil doings, which was eugenics. Established history already, okay? So let's say that this, so you knew this is Hitler. Hitler, as we know him, going to kill, this guy here is going to kill 6 million Jews and going to change the face of our mortal souls in a way, right? Would you not, if you had the opportunity, kill him? And then what if you did? What if you got, I'm going to take those off so it's not glaring. What if you got the guy who was the harlot? What if you got the guy who was going to push the button? What if you knew that somehow, and there he was standing in front of you? Wouldn't you kill him? Of course you would. And would you bat an eye about it? No, you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't. And how would you explain that to any normal human being? How would you explain that? And that's the stranger. How could he explain it? Everything he said, what would he say? I didn't even know what to say. If you took me and put me on the stand, I wouldn't know what to say. And what did he do to get out of it? What he said was that death will bring him a whole new experience, a whole new life. And that's what he had to look forward to in the cell. And if you know that, which he would know, it's not so bad, is it? It's not so bad. It's not so bad. I'm not encouraging you to kill the harlot because I am not that person that you're saying I am, right? Or that they are saying that I am. Although I am that person in the worst way, aren't I? In the worst way. Because I am celibate. I am virtuous. I am pure. I am filled with a kind of innocence and purity and passion and curiosity. I am all those things, which are all the things likely of somebody who would steal your heart, the harlot. And then there are other things that are physical as well, right? Other things that are physical as well. So you never anticipated. You thought you'd walk up to the harlot, recognize her, and shoot her, and that would be the end of it. You are stupid. You are stupid, stupid, stupid. The stranger could do it because he's not of us. He's not of us, and it's why he couldn't explain it. What would he say? He would say, what? I know he's a bad man. In the future, he's going to do that. The end. The end of you. Who are you? How could you know? Are you a witch? What could a stranger here in this world say if he recognized a demon, Satan himself, who was going to destroy the world? He had the opportunity and the gun. What could he say in a court of law about how that unfolded? That, my friends, is the story of the stranger. Oh, I never used to be able to do that in English, and I just have to say, I'm so proud of myself. I think I'm going to go, you know what? You know what I'm going to go do? And it's not you guys with the turning your freaking motors on. That's not it. Jeez. Okay, all right, so we did not get to the first day one of our story yet, and that's okay. I needed to tell you all those things, and this is the story that we're going to start with, which is another one of my husband's books, and I believe it sounds to me like it's going to be fantastic. We're hitting another heavy duty. Actually, this is more heavy duty than we've had, right? The acknowledgments, the end of the story. Looks like there's almost only 8 chapters here. The final letter. So 335 pages. So look it up. We're going to start that tomorrow in our classroom. Thanks for joining me. I hope you listened to me. I hope you sort of enjoyed that whole thing that I shared with you. I found it fascinating. There were more recognizable buildings. Sylvia Braga lived on the end of the street, and I recognized her apartment there. And it was an apartment, and it was on the end of the street where our apartment, Grandma and Grandpa's apartment, was in the middle of. But then they had a house, so that was confusing. It could have been our apartments. I don't know. We could have had people renting downstairs. I'm not exactly sure of the ownership. I was very, very little, right? So I remember their bedroom off the main room in the house. I remember the carpet going up the stairs. That's why I remembered those stairs. I remember the painting and the flowers. I thought all bedrooms had flowers on their walls. And I remember the carpet going up the stairs. I could still tell you what it looked like, because Grandma and Grandpa had the same carpet in their house as well as what was going up our stairs. Thanks for joining me. Been listening to a little bit of my story here, which goes to show you I'm not fucking crazy. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks for joining me here in the classroom with the teacher to get your mind, body, and spirit healthy. Thanks.